Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for being here. I want to send my appreciation to Reps Anthony and Love, Cherry, and Gay Dagnego, who came here this morning to help us launch this package of bills. I also want to extend my gratitude to the City of Grand Rapids and the parents of the Parents for Healthy Homes, part of the Healthy Homes Coalition of West Michigan. Really proud to have that organization so beautifully represented here in Lansing today as we kick off this work. My name is State Rep Rachel Hood. I serve the 76th House District, which is in the city of Grand Rapids in Kent County, Michigan. And we know in Kent County that the residents of our state have been forced to weather the storms of a growing number of threats to their health and well-being over the last several years. Threats posed by PFAS and groundwater contamination, and perhaps most dangerous of all, lead. The nation has watched as the devastation caused to the families of Flint unfolded, and collectively we all told ourselves never again. In response to this tragedy, we moved to enact new laws and policies to keep our state's drinking water safe. And though we've taken significant strides to protect Michigan's residents throughout the state, until now, we've failed to have a broader conversation about the dangers posed by lead that still persist in other areas of our lives. The paint in our homes, the soil in our neighborhoods, and sometimes residue left in our cosmetics still pose a threat to our communities, our children, our older vulnerable populations, and more. And that's why my colleagues and I have joined together to unveil this comprehensive package today to eradicate childhood lead exposures. I'd now like to turn it over to my colleague, Rep. John Cherry, to describe some of the provisions included in our package.
Thank you, Representative Hood. I'm State Rep. John Cherry, and I am proud to represent the families of Genesee County, the cities of Flint, Mount Morris, Flushing, Swartz Creek, and the townships of Flint and Mount Morris. You know, the people of Flint and Genesee County, we know better than anyone the dangers of lead poisoning, especially among children. Children are at the highest risk for becoming poisoned by lead, and they're also the most vulnerable to the wide range of persistent health effects that lead poisoning creates. It can be harmful to the brain and central nervous system and thereby reduce cognitive function. Children exposed to lead may have behavioral problems, delayed growth, and challenges learning and reading. Lead poisoning does not just affect the health and future of the individual children who have been poisoned. It also requires communities to invest more to solve the issues created by poisoning, whether that means increased medical care, academic support, or additional strain on our mental health and criminal justice systems. We can and must do better. That's why our package will cut the lead action level in half, from 10 micrograms to the CDC recommended 5 micrograms. It also creates the Safe Cosmetics Act to prohibit the manufacture, sale, and distribution and warehousing of cosmetics made with harmful substances, including lead and formaldehyde. The bill that I'm introducing requires lead screenings for infants and children so that health and developmental intervention can take place as early as possible for children who are exposed to lead. Those screenings would also be part of a child's immunization record so they can receive the care they need throughout their life. If we want to get serious about eradicating lead exposure, then we need to pass this package of bills that approaches it comprehensively. And I'm happy to join with my colleagues today to push for these protections for our families and neighbors. And now I'm going to hand it over to Representative Gay Dagnego.
Thank you, Representative Cherry. On Martin Luther King celebration, I had an opportunity to meet with the Greater Detroit Realtors Association, where the president is Miranda Bartell, met with people like Shirley Ratton, Robin Barnes, and so many others who are realtors in the city of Detroit. And we know that the requirements in the city with respect to lead, with the ongoing tests annually, sometimes are cost prohibitive as they transfer those costs to residents. but we still want to be proactive in addressing solutions to make sure throughout our state, not just in the city of Detroit, that children are considered in homes that are being leased daily, annually, and monthly. I proudly represent the families of the city of Detroit, where some of the highest lead exposure rates in the state. While the elimination of leaded gasoline and active use of lead paints have greatly reduced our children's exposure to lead, there are ongoing exposure to historic sources of contamination, most often from lead-based paint in older homes. Homes you'll find concentrated in cities like Detroit, Grand Rapids, Muskegon, and several other communities throughout Michigan. As many as 100,000 housing units in Michigan have been estimated to be a high risk of lead hazards, many of which house occupants living below the poverty line. And we know the impact of cognition that lead has on our children. In fact, a child from a low-income home household is 4 times more likely to be exposed to lead than the average rate of children living in older homes, meaning our most vulnerable neighbors are the ones left to suffer the most. We can change that. Our package will require a lead-based paint inspection before the sale or transfer of all homes built before 1978, the year the lead-based paint was banned. It would also shift the burden of proof of lead-based paint hazards in the rental housing units from tenants to landlords. And my bill will require lead-based paint inspections and abatement for rental units when a local government receives a complaint from a lessee. To that end, our package would also provide tax credits for qualified lead professionals who are licensed by MDHHS and maintain a good standing with practicing lead abatement strategies. Every Michigander deserves to feel safe from harm within their own homes, and that includes being safe from the threat of lead poisoning and exposure. We have the means to protect our homes and our families. We need only the courage to act. I'm thankful today that we have Sumiko Douglas with Parents for Home Lead Abatement. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sumiko Douglas, and I am a parent advocate for Parents for Healthy Homes. I haven't been with Parents for Healthy Homes for 2 years now. The reason I started this journey with Parents for Healthy Home is a friend actually invited me to the group. And later on, as I started learning about lead exposure and what it can do to the children, I started seeing the effect in my son. My son actually tested positive for lead. However, because he was not at the 10 level, they just dismissed it, told us to eat leafy green vegetables, and sent us on our way. However, it did still affect my son. It's still affecting him now. This was about probably 7 years ago. He's 13 now, and now my son suffers from a number of several things, ADD and ADHD, which I have learned that those are 2 separate things. He also suffered from behavior issues because he cannot control his issues, where we have in place at the school where he actually could go raise his hand and say, hey, I need to take a walk, just to let off some energy that he has now. It affects his cognitive thinking as well. So I thank you all for bringing these bills forward, because the numbers do need to go down a little further. Just because he was not at a 10, he did not get the proper medical treatment that he needed, and now it's still affecting him to this day. It will continue to affect him long term for the rest of his life. So now this is something that we will have to deal with forever in him. He is a little healthier, however, but we still have to deal with the ADD, the ADHD, and anything else that comes arise. We look at the statistics, and it shows that 30% of individuals that are incarcerated suffered from lead exposure at one point in their life. We look at the statistics, and it shows that these babies that grows up to be adults suffer from cognitive thinking, as well as pregnancy risk. A number of things go back to lead exposure. So I want to thank you all for coming today and for bringing this to the forefront and making it known that this is not acceptable for our babies. Thank you.
So as you see, long before the disaster in Flint, Michigan was facing a public health crisis from lead poisoning. In Grand Rapids, hundreds of kids every year continue to be diagnosed with high lead blood levels. In 2013, the CDC ranked our state as the 5th worst in the nation for a rate of childhood lead poisoning, largely due to exposure within the home. And through the widespread use of lead paint in gasoline, and though the widespread use of lead-based paint and gasoline have ended, those threats still persist today. But as my colleagues and I can tell you, healthy homes means healthy families. And it's way past time for us to take bold action to make sure that our families have all of the resources that they need to deliver successful kids to help us move into our future. Not only for our children, but for generations of Michiganders to come. We are making sure that these issues are addressed and that they're addressed as swiftly as possible, and that resources are available to help families eradicate lead in homes.